Growing up with a Nintendo 64, you would have your banger titles, your Marios, your Pokémons, your Zeldas, but also there would be games that you would just have. They're solid, they offer fun multiplayer time with your pals, but there aren't games that you're running into a fire to save. One of those games for me was 1080 Snowboarding. It was always just there and we would play it sometimes, but I don't think we even really knew how to play. We would race each other a couple times and then switch games. Even when the sequel came out, I don't think we ever even played it, but today I will. So let's take a look at the 1080 Snowboarding series. "1080 Snowboarding" released in 1998 for the Nintendo 64, and for today's standards, it's just a very basic snowboarding game. But for back then, it was all we really needed. You pick one of 5 characters and have a handful of modes to mess around. You have match race, time attack, trick attack, contests, 2 players, and training. After selecting what you want to do, they take you to the cabin where we would want to hang out for a bit. In Match Race, there are 3 circuits to complete from normal, hard, and expert, and as you complete each one, you unlock the next one's badge's difficulty. You have 3 lives to do so, and you have to do them back to back. What you're basically doing is just racing down the summit to beat the random character they put in front of you. Each character you have to select has stats, and so does the boards. I did notice a difference between the character stats, but not so much between the boards. The feeling and controls definitely take some time getting used to. It's just a game that you really have to master to fully enjoy. You crouch to gain more speed, and if you do so, you do lose some controls. You can also do tricks off the ramps, and you have a health bar that if you deplete, you fail. So, in Match Race, there really isn't a reason for you to do tricks at all. All that really does is slow you down and give you a higher chance of wiping out. And the game is hard enough if I'm honest. I don't really remember it being this difficult. It's considered a simulation which provides cool realism, but I think this affects the fun factor. It's just way too sensitive. Sometimes you wipe out and are not completely sure why. You don't even get air sometimes when you wipe out. You might just be going too fast. If you hit something too fast, you wipe out. It really depends on the character you pick. The balance skill does affect a little bit, but still. You really have to manage between speed and control. I do wish it was more forgiving. Yeah, it might be super realistic, but it ultimately comes off as more annoying than fun, especially because 90% of the times, if you don't land absolutely perfect, you either wipe out or you're taxed on your damage meter. I will say that the lateral controls are smooth and feel very nice, but what sucks is you can be doing a perfect run down the hill, get clipped barely, and end up being stuck for a minute and your opponent passes you, which ruins your whole race. I do think that finding your character is huge for the different modes, and once you do that, the game does become a little bit more fun. A little tip: do not hit restart when you're a few races in. You won't restart the race. They will take you back to the first race. You have to actually play out the race or retire. That really pissed me off. But the courses do feel open and have multiple splits down the hill and even provide some shortcuts. But how the levels are laid out, I still liked and appreciate. But let's head back to the cabin real quick. In time attack mode, you have to beat the clock, passing through checkpoints, getting more time added as you do so. And in trick attack, that has different levels. Some where you can catch major air to perform one trick. The other one, there's a half pipe, and other ones you're just going down the course and you have to beat the highest score. Performing the tricks isn't tough. You just have to push the joystick one way plus a face button. But with so much air, you have to land parallel to the ground. I still don't know how you're supposed to land perfectly. Some say press the crouch button, others say don't. I don't know, the game doesn't really tell you. But in the half pipe, it feels like it doesn't matter how you land. And this is just way more forgiving, and for that, the trick attack mode is where I had more fun, especially in the half pipe. I just wish the whole game was a little bit more like that. Let's go back to the cabin one more time. Contest mode was okay. You play a smorgasbord of modes, one after the other, trying to get the highest score, and that's pretty much it for the game, including multiplayer, but you already know no friends, so whatever. The game is actually a pretty neat simulator for the time. The different surfaces pull you different directions. Sometimes you come across ice and it's super slippery. The thicker ice slows you down, and graphically, I really can't complain. This is off the Switch Online, but upon release, the graphics were considered the highest the N64 could offer at the time, and I can still kind of tell that 25 plus years later. The reflection of the ice of the snowboarder is great. I like how the clothes move, simulating the speed. The snow falling looks great. Levels really aren't empty. The design, like I mentioned, is very well done. Even in the wide open spaces, there are houses and ramps you can ramp off of. There's a bunch of trees. There's a lot of other obstacles on the way. So it's definitely not just empty. All this is great, yeah, but I just think that the realism got in the way in terms of the gameplay. It's just too real for its own good, in my opinion. There's fun to be had here, definitely, but it comes with you mastering the game. Now, did its successor do the same? Let's take a look. I'm not gonna lie, I was nervous because on the surface it looked like they just really copy and pasted the game. Same modes, except for contest, they changed the name, but pretty much the same thing. Match race, it had the same format with the 4 badges, the 4 races, and you move up as you go. But my nerves fade away the second I started playing because the most noticeable thing for me is that the controls are definitely way better, way more forgiving. The racing actually feels like racing, if that makes any sense. It feels like I'm in a race. In the first game, it felt more like I'm going to try not to wipe out. And if I make it down this hill before the first game, kudos. There's just way more feedback this time around. You understand what and how things are happening. There's a prompt to let you maximize your jumps as well. You don't even have to land perfectly, but it helps if you do because holding down the crouch button gives you a little boost as you land. There's visual feedback. You can see when you land perfectly. You can feel when you land perfectly. And even if you lose balance, you can regain it by spinning the joystick in circles. In the first game, doing tricks in races was a hindrance. Here, it actually helps. It helps you build the power meter, and once that's full, it lets you push down opponents by ramming into them. Yeah, kind of a dick move, but the game's the game. Grinding feels way better. They adopted a bit of the Tony Hawk method with the balance bar. In the first game, it's so meh, I even forgot to mention it. There's still a damage bar, but this time, even this felt more forgiving. This barely even became a factor to me. Balancing speed and control again is the main techniques for the races. When to crouch, when to not for more control is definitely the strat to win any race. And in the courses, they're just way more interactive. You can smash through things. A bridge might just start randomly collapsing. The environments are great. There's skiers in your way. It's just much more alive than the first game. You even have to pay attention to these guys because they might open up jumps and shortcuts. So you have to pay attention to what they're doing as well. The last event of the badges is a beat the clock challenge, where you must race against the clock. But you're not only against the clock, you also have to race against the avalanche. Oh, look at the title. So there's an avalanche that sets off in the middle of the track. There's even a cutscene and everything. I did find it funny that this massive, dangerous avalanche disappears the second you cross the finish line. I guess there's some magical force field. But the feeling of speed is just so much fun, especially when you're racing against the avalanche with visual and audio cues simulating the speed. You can see the snow piling up right behind you. There really is a little sense of danger there. Needless to say, I just found the match race way more fun this time. They did learn and decided to make it more fun, in my opinion. The character stats were more as well. The board stats as well. They're way more than just skins. 3 characters do carry over from the first game, and there's 5 unlockable ones. Also, each character has to unlock their own board as well. There's over 20 courses to shred. The levels, like I said, look great. There's a nice variety between them. I just love the map also that shows when there's splits in the tracks, making you want to go down to the same level again, just checking out the other path. Once you pick the mode you want to play, you're set to the loading screen where you get to pick which song you want to listen to as you're coming down. The gate challenge has you going through gates, and the challenge is going through them all. Time trial is a bit different this time around. You have to get the lowest time, but you also have to find 5 coins scattered throughout the track. Is it called track? Is it called summit? I don't know. Hill? Whatever, but finding the 5 coins was fun and challenging as well. So, while they improved and all that, I thought that was a big deal because those were the worst parts from the first game. Unfortunately, they messed with the trick system. They just made it wonky, and that was the best part of the first game. It works well when you're filling up your power bar during the races, but in Trick Attack, I don't know what tricks are better, if there's a penalty for repeating tricks. Points wise, it's just not the best. At least it feels okay to perform. This was the best part of the first game for me, like I said, and now it's definitely the worst. You're supposed to link tricks together to make combos, but they made it kind of complicated. Once you let go of your trick, your guy starts to flash. so you have to link the other trick while he's flashing, plus you have to add flips and spins to them. I don't know, maybe it was just me. I didn't get a full grasp of the tricking gameplay. It just felt wonky. That's the best word I can use to describe my experience with it. It's just not as tight as like a Tony Hawk or as smooth as an SSX per se. It's just wonky. This might have been me. Definitely let me know down in the comments. But speaking of SSX, I think that series could be the main reason why we never got any more 1080s. It did more in 3 years before Avalanche ever released. SSX released in 2000, and it just kept getting better after that. SSX Tricky released in 2001, and SSX 3 released in 2003, a month before Avalanche, and did more than Avalanche did, not only with its trick system and all the race stuff, but they actually even featured Mario, something that the GameCube exclusive Avalanche game didn't do. I guess he does feature as an ice sculpture, but that don't count. I feel like back then 1080 knew it couldn't compete with the SSX series. They went faster, crazier, and more extreme, but I will say, without comparing both of those, Avalanche is a fun game. It offers something different. Yeah, it's maybe more tamer fun, but it's still fun nonetheless. But here's my question to you. Do you think it's time for a new 1080? SSX is gone, and although there are a few good snowboarding games out there, it's definitely not a genre that has a top dog at the moment. So there is a window for a 1080 game to be that. In 2021, Giles Goddard, creator of 1080 Snowboarding, said he would totally make a Switch 1080 if Nintendo asks. He did since then release Carve Snowboarding for VR, and that's considered a spiritual successor to 1080. But an actual new entry in the series is nowhere in the horizon, and is yet another franchise Nintendo just has sitting there collecting dust.